Hello, my name is Zachary Abbott, and this is my PowerPoint recording for Module 2 Communication Challenges. Alright, in this scenario, the first body language signs I'm going to talk about is the initial contact with the victim, Susan Jones. As the officer approaches, her voice appears to be abnormally shaky. She's also observed to be talking rather quickly. And when I talk about conclusions in this PowerPoint, the conclusions are my assumptions based on the information given to me. Again, there could be other things at play, such as physical disabilities and stuff that I may not have knowledge to, but I'm just going off of the symptoms and signs in the scenario. And my conclusion based on the shakiness of her voice and the fact that she's talking rather quickly tells me that she's nervous. Just these two in combination is telling me she's nervous and anxious about the scenario that she had called in. Number 2, I'm going to talk about the subject, Aiden Abdi. When the officer arrives on scene, it is observed that he's pacing in a circle in the parking lot, and it's observed that he's waving his hands up and down and shouting. In my personal experience, this is just showing frustration. With his hands flaring up and down, he's getting physical. This could be that he's amped up from the situation, the physical situation that he just had with the victim. This could mean like a pre-fight or flight as adrenaline is going through his body. So I would just say the conclusion is telling me that he's amped up and that officers approaching should be cautious just due to the fact that he appears to be still rather worked up from the situation. Alrighty. Source number 3 is again this subject here, Aiden Abdi. He's swaying and he's unsteady on his feet multiple times in the scenario, I believe it's stated. It also, when the officer is talking, is observed that he has a hard time focusing when he's talking to him. He also appears to almost fall down at one point. This could be a couple of things, but from what is given to me, the body language is telling me that the subject may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, if not both. Just the swaying and being unsteady, in addition to him having a hard time focusing, aren't necessarily normal human behaviors, being that the officer picked up on him. Would tell me that's abnormal. And I just want to quote something according to the American Addiction Center. This is talking about alcohol at 0.15%. This blood alcohol is rather high, and I kind of highlighted key terms that I believe are similar in this situation to the body language that is showing us. So at 0.15, you will have much less control over your balance and voluntary muscles, so walking and talking are very difficult, and you may fall and hurt yourself. These are exact symptoms or signs that happened in this situation. And at 0.20 to 0.29, it touches a little bit on confusion and disorientation, which could go back to him having a hard time focusing. Alright, some communication challenges related to diversity in this scenario. The first one I'm going to touch on is the victim, Jose. Jose is a Go Shop employee. He's Hispanic male, and it's also observed that he has minimal English knowledge, and there's no Spanish-speaking officers working currently. There are a couple solutions, I think, to this communication barrier. You could use something like an electric interpreter situation. I know some agencies have them, but it might be difficult to reach one depending on if it's a certain time of day or just the resources of the agency at the time. You could also use a reliable English to Spanish interpreting software such as Google Translate, which is free. Personally, I've used this. I work at as a CO for a local county jail, and I actually just used this a couple weeks ago, and the inmate at the time was able to type back to me to communicate with me, and this proved to be actually pretty vital because I know almost no Spanish, so this could be a solution for this barrier. The second communication challenge I'll touch on is with the suspect, Abdi. He is a black male and is claiming to be deaf. And from my conclusion by his body language, I'm assuming and suspect that he's under the influence just because he's, as earlier stated, swaying, he's unsteady on his feet, and he's also having a hard time focusing when talking. So the second solution in this PowerPoint, you could use pen and paper to try to communicate with him, given that he is fluent in English, is unknown, I believe, at this point. But being that he's deaf, the pen and paper would be the easiest solution to try to communicate with him. The third solution for a communication barrier, being that he's under the influence and that he's deaf, it would make the communication process that much harder. So not only are we having to deal with him being deaf, we are also dealing with a possible individual who is under the influence. So this is almost two communication barriers at one time. So the solution may need to be to arrest him, and he may need to sober up if he is under the influence in order to use that second solution there, which was pen and paper, or some sort of translator to try to communicate with him. I know from personal experience, when dealing with people who are under the influence and we are speaking the same language as English, that can already be hard to communicate as well. So being that he's deaf, I would see communication being very hard, being that he's deaf and under the solution. So time may be required to kind of eliminate one of those barriers so we can deal with the other. And this is just my resource that I used for the blood alcohol in one of my first body signs that I discussed. Thank you very much for watching.